Hello and welcome to today's episode of Inspiring Women in Canada. My name is Rima Zuberi and I'm very excited to be here with the Mayor of Mississauga, Bonnie Crombie. Mayor Crombie, thank you so much for coming to our show today.
Thank you for having me, Rima. I was excited to get back in touch with you.
And it was great. I was really happy that our audience would get to hear some of your story. I've heard it at some of the other events. And you have so many stories. I know we can't go through everything.
We had a great women's event at one of the Riding Association meetings, and we were all sharing our stories, and it was a lot of fun.
It was great. So what I was hoping that the audience could learn about you was how you got into politics to begin with, and a little bit of a history of what you did sort of before politics, because you weren't always in politics.
Well, certainly. Well, thank you. So I should let everyone know that, like them, my family are immigrants as well. My parents came from Eastern Europe, from Poland, and my grandfather served in France during the war, and after the war he was a prisoner and captured. It was a very difficult time, and they didn't want to go back to Poland because at that time it became communist. And so they wanted to go somewhere in the free world, obviously, and my grandmother had a sister in Canada, and so under the family reunification plan at the time, they were able to come to Canada. And so we were always very grateful to the government of the day that they were able to come, and my grandmother and my grandfather and my mother, who was 12 years old. So I'm actually first generation Canadian, and so it's a kind of story that everyone can relate to, because we had a very simple life growing up. My mom married, but then it didn't work out, and we lived with my grandparents. So we had a large extended family. We lived in a rooming house around the High Park area of Toronto. And it was very simple. I mean, we didn't have dinners out. We didn't have vacations. We didn't have a car. You know, it was just a simple life. We would go home and have dinner and have great family time and tell stories. And my grandmother would teach me how to cook Polish delicacies. I would spend time with my grandfather. He didn't have a grandson, so we used to watch hockey together. It was wonderful, and I lived and grew up in a large extended family with lots of cousins close by, so it was wonderful. But about the time I was 17, I had a friend in high school whose uncle was a cabinet minister, and he was the first minister for multiculturalism.
Oh, wow. This is provincial or federal? Sorry.
This was federal at the time, and I was very interested in why he would go knock on doors for his uncle. And of course, he talked to me about the policies of the party at the time, and I had found Pierre Trudeau so inspirational as a leader, and he had such wonderful policies for new immigrants to bring them to Canada and to get them integrated. And he had a minister for multiculturalism responsible for that, because they were bringing people to Canada from all over the world, places like Poland, where we were from, and of course the countries are much broader today. Like even in the beautiful city of Mississauga, we have people from 200 countries speaking 150 different languages, right? We are so diverse, so vibrant, but yet so inclusive. And those are the values that, you know, he stood for, and much the way my grandparents and my parents were. You work hard, you get a good education, you can really make something of your life. And under the Pierre Trudeau government, he was so welcoming of new immigrants and tried to get them integrated. And I thought this was somebody very inspirational, and I could work for him. And so when I learned that my friend's uncle was this minister of multiculturalism, I said, yes, I'm going to knock on doors for him. And I would go to the doors and say, I want you to vote for this man who is helping all the new immigrants, like all of us, integrate into the community and get better lives. And, you know, it was all about taking that risk, coming to a new country, which we all did, right? And it's an opportunity for a better life for your children, right? And where everyone in Canada, particularly in Mississauga, has an equal opportunity to succeed, I like to say. So that's what got me started. I felt very strongly that this inspirational leader should be reelected, and I wanted to be a part of that, and I wanted the opportunity to affect positive change in my community. I felt that I worked on many campaigns. That was the first one, but I worked on them all after that. I got involved in student politics, and sat on executives and boards. And no matter who ran federally or provincially, I always knocked on doors. I always helped. And it was just being around opinion leaders, helping to shape change and how to affect positive decisions. You're around these people, particularly young people. I always encourage them to get involved in politics because young people have so much energy, but they have so many ideas.
Yes.
And what better way than if you're closest to the people in power to get your ideas implemented? And that's how I was. I was like, these are some of the things I'd like to see, and can we do this? And then you have ears that are able to listen, and they can actually execute policies. So
and you felt you were able to have a voice even though you were young and you weren't an elected official. You were just helping others.
I'll be honest with you. I never thought I would be an elected official.
Oh, really?
No,
never. All right.
I loved youth politics. I love politics generally, but I loved business as well. And I mean, I got a great education. I did my undergraduate degree in international relations, politics, some economics as well. Went on to have a career starting in advertising, then in marketing. I've worked for some great companies, like I worked for ad agencies, and then the McDonald Corporation, but in the head office, obviously in marketing. Then the Walt Disney Company again in corporate communication. And then I went on and did an MBA, and I worked at the Insurance Bureau of Canada, and then a little while later I joined a classmate of mine from MBA school, and we started up a cosmetics company called Cargo Cosmetics. And from there I wanted to take a step back with young children,
right?
Because you know how
Yes.
you know
Yes.
the demands of young children, and so I wanted some more flexibility. So I left the corporate world and left being an entrepreneur, because entrepreneur is most difficult.
Very
you work
demanding.
day and night.
Yes.
I needed more flexibility, so I wanted to be home with kids. I wanted to consult, but on my timeline, and give back to the community, which I've always believed in, that you give back to the community. And so I sat on so many boards and was engaged in the grassroots, and I was one of the people who helped raise money to build the cancer center at Credit Valley Hospital. I was on the Hazel McCallion's Blue Ribbon panel on the arts, looking for sustainable funding for the arts. I was on the Brain Injury Association board, on the police board. I was on so many boards, and I was kind of that go-to person. So I suppose it was logical that, given that I had a background in politics and in business, and of course it was a time where they wanted more women to be involved in politics, that they came to me and said, you should run for a nomination.
Okay, and it had not occurred to you until somebody approached you and said you should run?
Not at all. Okay. I said, you want me? I remember the first time I was asked to run, I thought, oh, no, don't be silly. I've got somebody really, this great man I know, and he's perfect. I'll speak to him about running. And sure enough, he took the nomination. Right. I recommended him. And on election night, I was scrutineering for him, which means you count the ballots, right? And he was winning. And I thought, wow, this could have been me. I could have run. I could have won. He's winning, because I thought it was an unwinnable riding. They like to give women unwinnable ridings.
They do, the glass cliff. Yes.
Exactly.
Right.
So I thought, well, okay. So it wasn't my turn. It wasn't my time. I'll tuck that away, and maybe some other time in the future. And
so that planted the seed.
It did plant a seed. Okay. I never thought I'd see my name on a ballot. I really didn't. But it did thought, wow, somebody thinks I'm the kind of caliber of person, have the expertise to run an election campaign.
Because I read that studies have shown you have to ask women 6 times.
Is that right?
Ask a man once. And you have to ask a woman at least 6 times before she'll say yes.
Interesting. So I went on to run because I've always been involved in the back rooms, to run a mayoral campaign in Toronto.
Oh, okay.
I know.
Wow.
Yes, back in 2003. And then I went on to do the federal leadership campaign for the Liberal Party, and was very involved in that. And then all of a sudden, there was a Liberal member of Parliament who crossed the floor to the Conservatives, which doesn't happen too often, but once in a while, I suppose there are some floor crossings. So they're looking for a candidate in Streetsville. And so suddenly my name came up again. Somebody who's involved in the community, woman, but with a business background.
And why was that important, the business background? Just because it makes you more electable?
I suppose. Just they knew I had some substance, and I had worked but raised a family, and I was very involved in the community. So I kind of brought all those aspects to the table, and they liked that. But they put me out to open nomination.
Yes.
I ran against 5 other men
Oh.
and another woman
Yes.
who was a media personality. And I thought, oh boy, this is going to be really tough.
Right.
But I'm a pretty good organizer. And because I had been on the leadership campaign,
Yes.
I had the best lists.
Oh, nice. That's right.
I'm a pretty good organizer.
Right.
So I'm a pretty good organizer. So I managed to win on the first ballot.
Yes.
With 70% of the vote.
Wow.
I know,
Interesting.
right?
So just to be clear, math-wise, you had 70%. That means the other 5 men and 1 woman had the remaining...
5 men,
Yeah.
1 other woman. There's
Yes,
7 of us.
Yeah. They split up the remaining 30%.
They split up 30%
in
of
the
vote.
first ballot, so you were a
First
clear
ballot.
winner. That's
Clear
pretty
winner.
impressive, pretty
And
exciting.
I have to tell you, it was the most impactful experience of my life going to
believe
Ottawa,
it.
if you
Yes.
can imagine, just the awe and the majesty
Yes.
of walking into the Commons building, the Parliament buildings in Ottawa with so much history.
Yes.
And I just kept thinking about my predecessors. Wow, Pierre Trudeau walked here, Don Diefenbaker worked here, like everybody came through here, Jean Chrétien. I was just so kind of awestruck all the
Yes.
time walking into work, and did some really great work. I became GTA caucus chair. I was on Public Accounts Committee, Veterans Committee, Heritage Committee. Really enjoyed my time. But there was a government change in the next
Yes.
election, and unfortunately, we all lost our seat in Mississauga.
Yeah. Yes.
But I love serving the community. I had
You
been
felt
do-
you could make a difference?
Well, you do
Yeah.
make a difference. You make
Okay.
a real impact. And I wanted to continue serving the community, but I wasn't going to have the opportunity to go back to federal politics
Right.
for 4 years. So what are you going to do? And there had been an opening on Mississauga City Council.
Oh.
And Hazel came to my election night party and said that one of her councillors had been elected federally, and there would be a by-election, a seat on council, and I should think about that.
Oh, interesting. And now you were experienced, you knew you could win, so you decided to
Well,
go for it?
it took a little while
Yes.
because I was always thinking of kind of the federal issues first,
Okay.
immigration policy, financial
Right.
policy, finance, environmental policies. The work that the city does is so important and it's so
Yes.
close to the people, but I didn't realize that at the time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right, I
Okay.
was on the world stage, so I thought.
Yeah.
I was on NATO commissions and interparliamentary committees, and
Yeah.
I was going to the UN meetings, and it sounded so grand. But yet, the real work I feel today is done at the municipal level. We're the ones who build the communities, the cities. We're city builders. We build the roads, the bridges, the sewers. So it took me a little while to. It takes a little while when you're out of work suddenly to
Yes.
get it readjusted and focused. And so I decided I would run in the by-election in Ward 5, but there were 26 people there.
Wow, okay.
26, and including Carolyn Parrish, who's my colleague today and a formidable candidate,
Yes.
formidable. She had been an MP much longer than I had been. The woman who came second to then Eve Adams, her name was Simmercore. Eve's husband was on the ballot.
Oh, gosh,
Jake
yeah.
Deere, like fabulous people. I'm what am I thinking? Oh my gosh. But I thought, people know I work hard.
Right.
And they know I've made a difference in the communities and done some great work. And so maybe they'll give me a shot at doing this too. And
Okay.
it was, I think, a lot of vote splitting. I don't know. I got very
Yeah.
lucky because you can see
Yes.
formidable people to run
Right.
against, wonderful people,
And
all quality
running
candidates.
a campaign is exhausting, and you just finished the federal campaign.
That's it. And then
Yes.
you have to build a new team in a new
Right.
area, a new part of town, raise money all over again,
Yes.
and run another campaign. So we were defeated in, it was May or June. And then here it was, August, September, I was running in a new part of the city for a new level of
Yes.
government again. But it was fortuitous because somehow I got very lucky,
Okay.
worked very hard, no, we're not going to close up shop tonight yet. So we got to knock on 10 more doors. Let's finish this street. Let's go. I'm a bit of a workhorse.
Yeah, I'm sure you have to be.
You have to be. And so I won, and we did some great work on council. When I was the Ward 5 councillor, I started up a business improvement area in Moulton. We started up, my chief staff today and I, a hockey league for underprivileged kids up in Moulton, a shinny hockey league that was kind of a low-cost opportunity for get them to try hockey, and was just very accessible to people. We had town hall meetings every month. Every month.
And about how many people would attend?
Oh, it varied. It
Yes.
depended on the issue. So
really?
if it were in Malton,
Yes.
you could count on 100 people, sometimes 200 people. If it were in the South End, maybe 25.
Really interesting.
It was very, very, very different. The people in Malton really needed that more, closer relationship with their counselor that they didn't see very often.
Okay.
They needed, the more accessibility.
Yes.
So we decided to have office hours in Malton. Every Thursday afternoon, I would go to Malton and sit in the community center in one of the rooms, and we'd put up a sign said office hours with Councillor Crombie. Come on in, and slowly people started learning, and soon enough I would have lineups of people wanting to come in and talk about their issues. But it was wonderful. It was so engaged in the community. And then 2 years in, Hazel came to me and said she was going to retire.
Yes. And that was a loss for us, although she gave us 36
loss.
years.
God bless her. And that's what I said to her. I said, God bless you. You're 93. You've worked all your life in politics. You've given back so much to Mississauga. We all chose to live here because of Hazel McCallion. She built the city in her vision, right? Her stewardship. She was the strong fiscal manager, and it was the place we chose to live, to work, to invest, to raise our children. I did it. You did it. I wasn't one of those people born in Mississauga. I chose Mississauga to raise my kids. And she wanted to retire, and she said, well, have you decided if you're going back to federal politics? And I really wasn't sure because we were doing so much great work at the city. It was fantastic, all the great work. But I thought, well, I loved my time in Ottawa. I just don't know. And then she said, you should run for mayor.
Of the whole city.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine Hazel McCallion, who we all love, says she thinks you have what it takes to run for mayor.
There can't be a greater seal of approval.
Exactly. And there was never a question after that. I mean, I'm sure she told that to 10 other people too. But this is my story, and she encouraged me. So, we decided that, that was the time. It was a great opportunity too.
You left business because you wanted to balance time with your kids.
Oh, right. But meanwhile, but now, 5 or 6, 7 years have passed since I left.
The kids are older.
They're much older.
All right.
My daughter was 11 when I was in federal politics, and my son was 15 and the other one 19. So she was a bit young.
Right.
But at the time, my husband at the time, he was flexible, so he could balance with her a little bit.
Because it's all very time consuming. So then you decide to run for mayor, and I voted for you, just so you know.
Oh, thank you.
I had your sign up,
Thank you so much.
So obviously you won. And so then there was another mayoral election. Obviously you decided to run again. And there were many people on the ballot, if I remember correctly.
So on the first election in 2014, there were many people on the ballot, but I think the most serious candidates were Steve Mahoney and I. And Steve Mahoney and I, he's a great man. And we were great friends, and it was so unfortunate that we had to run against each other, but that happens.
Right.
It happens, and and we're still great friends today, I'll have you know that. And I think the world of him, and he made an incredible contribution to the campaign as well. And he's done so much, whether it was on council, he was in provincial politics, federal politics, and the WSIB board. He was running his own company, so he's done so much. So that was a pretty big challenge in itself. And then I ran for re-election, and so the first time I won with 63% of the vote, but this time it was almost 78%, so almost went up at 15%. So it tells me that I'm hoping it says that people think our team is doing a good job at City Hall for Mississauga residents and businesses, I hope.
Well, that's excellent. I know that as a resident of Mississauga, I'm very happy with the way our council is. I know that our council meetings can be seen online.
That's right.
Yeah, so sometimes I'm at work and I do watch
Oh,
the council
that's good.
meeting.
That's great. You should keep in touch. Yeah.
It's great, and I love the way you run meetings. I think
Thank
that's
you.
when I first sort of fell in love with you. I was
is that
like,
right?
She can really run meetings.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
very impressive.
That's the business background, you see?
Exactly, and I see that. So, and Mississauga is a city that's changing, obviously.
Is. Yes, so much going on.
The GTA is growing, and then we have a new Conservative government in place, and there's all these other changes as well.
And Ontario, that's right.
Yes, absolutely. So part of, as you mentioned earlier, Mississauga is a huge immigrant population. I'm an immigrant. My children are first generation. You are as well. And what's your thoughts or opinions on how involved our immigrant community is in Mississauga? with the community in general?
So I will tell you one of the first things I did being elected mayor the first time was create the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee. We call it DIAC for short. And it was because there wasn't a lot of diversity on our council.
Yes.
At the time, 4 years ago. And I wanted to be sure that we had our eyes and ears open to the diverse communities and to make sure that everyone was represented, and we really wanted to listen to make sure we were doing the right thing. And a lot of policies changed at the time, and some of them were smaller, like for instance, parking considerations. I remember having the discussion, parking variance consideration was given for Easter Sunday. And I said, well, we didn't have it for Easter? No, we didn't have it for Easter, but we had it for Good Friday. And I said, well, Eid's coming up. I assume we do it for Eid. And they said, oh no, only the statutory holidays and now Easter Sunday. I said, well, that doesn't seem fair. I mean, 20% of our population is South Asian, 11% speak Urdu. I'm sure there are a lot of practicing Muslims that doesn't seem fair. So we did that. We initially did just that one occasion, but we've since changed the entire parking consideration for 15-hour parking to take in consideration everyone's holidays.
Oh, which is fair.
Everyone's holidays,
right.
Not just Easter Sunday, Christmas Day, right? But everyone's holidays, because we have so much diversity, and it's so beautiful. And what I love is that we all want to celebrate together with each other, everyone's holidays together.
And that's one thing I love about following you on Facebook, is that you are at so many different communities events.
Oh, and I love it.
Yes.
I love going to everyone's events. We all learn about each other's cultures. We get to watch we learn about the history, and then the music, and the dance, and then the food.
Yes,
the food.
Oh, Mississauga is becoming like food mecca almost.
I agree.
Yes.
We have the best restaurants because we have the best people, and we have food from everywhere.
And it's all authentic. And then we get the fusion foods, which is good too.
That's interesting too.
So now that you've gotten sort of the city and the council more involved in diversity and inclusion, do you feel that...
Well, the other one was fireworks. For instance, we only allowed fireworks on New Year's Eve. But then the Chinese community came to us and said, yes, but Chinese people like to light fireworks for Chinese New Year's. And then the Indian community said, what about Diwali? Yeah. And so we said, we're going to be more inclusive. We got to expand that. And so that's the approach we took. Now we say with a permit, but certainly with a permit, But yeah, now you can light fireworks on Diwali and Chinese New Year as well. And that was something we weren't cognizant of. It was the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee that said, hey, pay attention.
Right.
Pay attention.
And to me, that's the inclusion part.
That's right. And the other one, I'll tell you, was very interesting was should non-residents vote? Non-citizens.
Yes.
Non-citizens vote in a municipal election.
And there was very strong opinions.
Very strong opinions.
Yes.
And council was leaning to allowing them. But it was the DIAC committee made up of the top 10 groups represented in Mississauga that said no. We're citizens. We had to fight to become citizens. We earned the vote, and we think everyone should. And even though council was leaning to allowing anyone who was a resident to vote, because it was a municipal election, so it impacted your property taxes, and we build your roads, your bridges, and sewers. So we thought, okay, in municipal, it's fair. They said no. And we have the committee. We listen to them. That's why we have the committee.
Right.
So we said, okay, we'll respect the wishes of the committee, made up of all the diverse communities of Mississauga.
That's so interesting,
wasn't it?
Yes.
I was surprised.
I would be too. Yeah, I would expect if you're a resident, you're being impacted, you should get to vote. But there's a reason you have a committee.
Diversity, inclusion, DIAC said no, so we said, okay, that's why we struck the committee. We're listening.
So do you find now that they're getting more involved in, I don't want to use the word mainstream necessarily, but outside of their own communities?
A little more integrated, a little more assimilated, I think so. The beauty of Mississauga is you can retain your identity and your culture, but yet be a Mississaugan through and through, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And the beauty of it, as I just mentioned, is we just love to celebrate with each other. I mean, I have a very strong group of friends who are all Muslim, and the unity in the community. Maybe you've heard of this group, of course, right? Yes. And sometimes they host Christmas events, and they bring all the Muslims of the unity in the community in the room, and they bring Christians, because Christians have different faiths too. Like I'm Catholic, but then there are Protestants, and even in the Protestants there's Methodists and United and different groups, and there are Baptists and Lutherans, and then there are Orthodox Christians like Coptic Christians and Ukrainian Christians. So they wanted to understand, what are the differences? We just thought you were all Christians, but now we see there are all differences, so how do you all Christmas different. And it was very enlightening for all of them and all of us too, frankly. So, but that's how we get together. We celebrate each other's faiths. There's a very strong interfaith community, interfaith dialogue community, and we have a Jewish community that's very vibrant, come together with the Baha'i and the Muslim and the Sikh and the Hindu and the Christian. We all come together. Very strong interfaith community. I hope I didn't miss anyone, but a very strong interfaith community.
And that's one thing that I have always admired about you, how you have vigorously defended the rights of every single community.
Absolutely. We have to stand up for each other.
Right.
We have to defend each other. In every instance, we stand shoulders. And I always say it, and I know it's become cliche, but we can't have any tolerance for any intolerance in Mississauga. And yes, there have been some incidents that have caused me a lot of embarrassed shame, frankly, when I see a beautiful Syrian refugee man with his wife and 2 children that was assaulted in a parking lot, one of our community centers. And I met him recently. I met him at Eid. He reached out to me, and I was so grateful to meet him because I felt so. I called the family at the time and was learning about his progress, would call periodically. But, that causes me great shame that happens. And unfortunately, it does happen from time to time in different places. But here, as long as we stand together and we don't tolerate it and we speak out against it and we, tell those people they're being prosecuted, of course, brought to justice, as they should, then we have no room for that in beautiful Mississauga.
And I do want to say it makes a big difference that you, in your position as leader, you say that as well. So
Absolutely
it's so much more powerful coming from you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, and I do, and all the community leaders do.
Yes, they do. It's just nice to see someone who is in a position of such authority, because unfortunately there are many others in similar positions of authority.
Well, we do have incidents of Islamophobia, but I remember as well, and when we did, during the mosque shooting in Quebec, it was the Jewish community at Salal that came together with I think it was the Ring of Love around the mosque.
Yes, I remember that.
Then, do you remember there was a shooting at a synagogue in the U.S., I think it was Chicago or wherever it was, and it was a Muslim community that came to the synagogue and said, in return, we would like to do the Ring of Love, and we'll be here. We'll stand with you. And this is Mississauga at its best, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Because people need to feel safe and free to practice their faith, practice their religion without fear of persecution.
Absolutely, and I like that we are free to practice our faith, and somebody else is not necessarily pushing their views onto us. Yes, so that's where the freedom comes in, the Canadian freedom, I think of it. Right. Yes. So now you, since this is Inspiring Women in Canada, the show, obviously you're a woman, and in these roles, when you were running for office, when you're in a leadership position, do you feel that you are expected to behave differently simply because you're a woman?
I think there are some differences. I mean, I understand how women aren't as forward as men are in marketing themselves. Men are very good at presenting themselves in, I won't say a boastful way, but they're good marketers, and they talk about their attributes. Women are a little more modest. We've been trained to be a little more reserved and a little more modest, and we're not. I'm a great effective communicator. I can raise money. I can get this done. That women don't do that. We're a little quieter. So the men have that edge when it comes to competition and marketing themselves, whether it's for promotions or, in my case, politics, but in business or in politics. And then, there's always the tug and the pull of family life. And I know that women, especially women of my age, we have children, but we have parents.
Yes. The
sandwich generation, right? And one day I'm dealing with my children's issues, trying to be the right mom, and then I've got my mother who just had hip replacement surgery, and I got to go do the grocery shopping and take her to the doctor. Meanwhile, I'm running a city, right? So we feel that tug of domestic responsibility to our children because we're nurturers at heart, and to our parents, and that's really tough. And the other thing, as I mentioned earlier, when I left the business world, it was for more flexibility, and many women do that too. They leave either politics or business. They don't like the cutthroat nature. They don't like the long hours. They don't like the travel. They want to, because they have the responsibilities at home. And so they opt out. They leave the corporate world. They don't enter politics because, they feel this responsibility. But what they do is they're very entrepreneurial.
Yes.
So many more women on a higher percentage basis than men start businesses.
Right.
They're home-based businesses or wherever, but just to create that flexibility so they can continue to work, but they have some flexibility. So they can take time off at 4 o'clock when the kids come home, get the homework started, get the dinner started, do some laundry, put them to bed and go back to work, right? That's how we all did it. Now, I often joke, after work, what do the men do?
Then they go out for drinks with their buddies. And
They go to sports games, they go network, they may go have a beer with their buddies. We rush home to make sure the homework gets started. And then I always tell women, yes, you go learn to play golf, because where else can you have 8 hours uninterrupted with your boss or whomever and market yourself in the way that only the men know how to do. But, we have to take those opportunities. We have to, the book Sheryl Sandberg, lean in, put your name in, sign up, put your hand up, take those risks, calculated risks. I can't imagine that I may not have run one day. If somebody hadn't approached me, said you'd have been a great candidate, and they twice, once provincially, once federally, and then Hazel municipally, if they hadn't said that, I may not have run. And I hope that I have brought some competent and good fiscal management to the city, competent management, and I wouldn't have been there. So women have to take that risk. I never thought I would see my name on a ballot. I never thought I would see my name on a brochure, and there it was. I remember when they came into my campaign office, my brochures with my picture on them, I thought, oh my God, it's real, there's my face. And I knocked on a door, and it was an advanced poll day.
Okay.
I knocked on her door and I said, hi, I'm Bonnie Crombie. I'm running for election. I'd like to be your member of parliament. I hope you'll consider voting for me. Oh, you're Bonnie. I just voted for you.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good.
It works. Put your name on a ballot and people vote for you.
Complete strangers.
So imagine. So women have to be more assertive too and take those risks, take those calculated risks. And they'll be better off and the community will be better off and their children will support them through it. We'll make amends. Because sometimes you just have to make accommodations. You get your girlfriends to pick up your children after school, take to the, the sports or the dance or whatever it is. And it takes a community. We always say that. You need a good support system, whether they're your friends or your family, colleagues. You need a support system, but you can make it work.
So I do want to speak more about taking risks. We do have to take a short break right now, but we will be back with Mayor of Mississauga, Bonnie Crombie, and we're going to discuss more about women taking risks. Thank you.
Injuries not only impact you, but also people around you. Life is better than this. Let's get your life back. The injury lawyers at Honourable Law will use their years of experience to handle your claim so that you can focus on your recovery. And remember, you don't pay until we win. Honourable Law.
Hello and welcome back to Inspiring Women in Canada. Today I'm interviewing Mississauga Mayor Bonnie Crombie, and we were discussing about women taking risks. So one of the questions I had, it's all great in theory, I want to do something, I'm scared, but I decide to take the risk. What do I do when I hit my first obstacle or somebody tells me that I'm wrong or I can't do it? How do you overcome that?
Well, you persevere, and if you think it's the right way, the course of action, you find a different way to do it. You just need to be very determined and very focused. And of course, you need to build a team around you. We are very good at this at City Hall. We have nothing else. We have a lot. I'm a consensus builder, and I have a wonderful team who work very, very hard for our city, and I work very hard that we stay together as a team and work together, and you see us at the Region Appeal. Mississauga, we're a voting bloc.
Yes, that's true.
We're a voting bloc, and we work very well together. So sometimes you need to build third-party support or outside support, stakeholder support from your team. If it's something you want to do and you're determined to do it, find another way around it, build support however you can. don't get discouraged. And if it didn't work out this time, then try again in a little while. Try a different angle.
And I do feel that we can be very creative when we need to
Women
be.
can be very creative,
Yes, we
for
can.
sure.
So speaking of creativity and consensus building, I did want to address the topic of Mississauga exiting from Peel region. That's been in the news lately. I know the province is reviewing it, and you have come out in support of the idea of Mississauga exiting Peel region. So could you talk about why you support
Sure.
that?
So I'm a very strong proponent of this. It's really time. Every other city that is single tier, independent, separate city is smaller than we are. Let's not forget, Mississauga is the third largest city in Ontario. Toronto, largest in Canada, Ottawa, our capital, and then Mississauga. And can you believe we have to go up to the region of Peel with Brampton and Caledon and get them to bless our votes, our development options. And everyone knows when you think about it, when you have two levels of government rather than one, there's duplication and extra cost. It's inherent in the system. And so we've said, look, this is about cost, yes, and savings, but more importantly, this is about civic pride, and it's also about the ability to make your own decisions. I don't want to have to go to Peel Region to ask Brampton and Caledon permission to go forward on a development. I want the people around me that can help me make those decisions. I want all commissioners at one table, and I want my councillors, who are excellent, by the way. They do their work very, very hard, and they're very dedicated. We want one council to make one set of decisions, and when they happen, I don't want to have to go up to the region of Peel and re-argue, re-vote with another city and another municipality that is not our own. And so here's how the economics of this works. Mississauga's always carried the freight at the region of Peel. It used to be up more than 70% of the costs, the operating costs at the region of Peel. Even today, it's 62% of the cost. And somebody will argue, but Brampton's growing. And yes, they are. They're building out subdivisions, but they don't have our assessment base. They may have a population that will rival ours in 2040 or 2050, but they'll never have our assessment base. They will not have 90,000 businesses, 73 Fortune 500 companies, 1,400 multinationals. We have the business base here, we have the airport, and we had a mayor, and myself included, Hazel and myself, who made attracting business here a priority, economic development. So we've carried the freight. We pay for 62% of the cost. We're 50% of the vote. We are 50% of the vote. So imagine if I'm down a person, we could be outvoted on our own developments that we've taken up there.
So
you've
the
got-
Region of Peel council members, how are they selected? Because I don't vote for them.
Certainly. So
Yeah.
all of Mississauga Council
Yeah.
sits at the region of Peel.
Okay.
But in Brampton and Caledon, it's a little bit different. They have regional councillors and city councillors. So there are some that do both, city and region, and some that are just city.
And are they
It's an odd hybrid.
elected by-
They're all elected.
Okay.
Everyone's elected.
As
But they're elected
regional
as a
coun-
regional.
as a
Mhm.
regional, okay.
Now, we've said to them, why don't you adopt our model and have everybody region? But that's their decision,
Okay.
so that's how they
Yes.
want to do it. But when you look at it, so my wards are typically the size of ridings. They're
Yes.
about 70, 80,000 people. Well, Caledon, God bless, it's a beautiful
Yeah.
community, but there's 70,000 people there, and they bring 5 people to the table.
Oh.
5.
Yes.
5.
And that's 5 votes.
5 votes.
Yes.
Versus us as 12.
Right.
And we have almost 800,000 people.
And
So
what-
there's an
yeah.
inequity. There is no representation by population. We don't benefit from the fact that we support and subsidize the region. And in addition, so I talked about decision making. I talked about civic pride, being Mississauga strong. I mean, we are so proud of our
Yes.
rich culture and history here. We talked about how we were proud that we're so diverse, vibrant, dynamic, but we're inclusive
Yes.
and we're welcoming of all people. And that's our history, and we're very proud of that. So it's more than civic pride, but it's about decision making. We want to make the decisions at one table. So the other issue is when we did the analysis at the Region of Peel, the Ernst & Young report came up with the same result that our internal report showed us. We did an internal study
Yeah.
that showed us that we spend an incremental $84 million a year that we send to Brampton and to Caledon to pay for things, largely Peel Police, because it's assessment-based, and regional roads. That's in addition to funding 62% of the operating costs at the region. Okay? So there's a huge inequity here. The Mississauga carries the freight, yet we don't have the votes. And there's this inherent duplication because you've got 2 councils. So we've kind of said, okay, look, it's just enough. That was our history, but we want our future to be self-reliant. independent. We want to make our own decisions. We want to be our own city. Look, we're only asking to have what other cities have. Let me count them for you. Windsor, London, Guelph, Hamilton, what else is around? Excuse me.
Barrie. Yeah.
Barrie,
Yes.
Kingston. Well, we already know Toronto and Ottawa, and then when you go north, Sudbury, Thunder Bay, and of course tiny little Dryden with 7,700 people. So if these municipalities, these cities can be single tier, we can too. And we knew that back 15 years ago when Hazel McCallion started this campaign in 2003, One City, One Voice. And by the way, Brampton is bigger today than Mississauga was 15 years ago when Hazel said Mississauga can go at it alone. So I'm saying Mississauga can go at it alone, Brampton can go at it alone, and Caledon, well, the Premier will decide what happens to Caledon.
So how do you picture regional entities such as Peel Police or Peel Water, Peel Garbage?
Right.
Would we have Mississauga Water and Mississauga Police? Or?
So look, a lot of these entities exist, like Peel Regional Police. I wouldn't change anything other than the funding model because we overpay.
Okay.
We overpay. It's assessment based right now, and it needs to change so that it is more equitable. That we pay for the policing we use. We don't subsidize to the tune of $74 million a year. Brampton's policing and their regional roads, and the other 10 or 15 million goes to Caledon. That's where that 84 million comes from. So that's police. Same model because it's run by an outside board, an arm's length board, right? The two mayors sit on it, and there are independents as well. So that could stay the same. You want here to create your budget, get it blessed by the board, and then go to both councils and say, this is your share, this is your share, can we count on your funding? And we would do that. Now with water, wastewater, so waste, trash, is already contracted out.
True.
You need a couple people to manage that, right? And so we also have Electra, where we all get our electricity, right? So there's no reason that water, wastewater can't be operated the same way, like through a utility-based. So it makes so much more sense. It would be more cost-effective for everyone. And all of this makes so much sense. So we're just waiting for a reason to prevail. Now, you have to understand, we didn't start this campaign. The Premier did.
That's very true.
The Premier did because when Hazel McCallion marched up to Queen's Park 15 years ago and said, one city, one voice, we want to be an independent city, the Premier at the time, I believe it was Dalton McGuinty, said, ooh, I don't want to really dabble in those kind of changes. He was the education premier, governance. I don't know. He didn't want to make the changes. This premier, Doug Ford, has said he's always looking for efficiencies. That's his mantra. So we think there are greater efficiencies with different kinds of governance. So prove to us what works for you. So they're looking at 8 different regions, and some regions have said we would like some amalgamation. Other regions, Halton for one, have said, leave us alone, it works perfectly well, we're happy. Mississauga, oh no, we're not happy with this situation. We're not happy being part of a 2-tier system. We would like to be separate. So, there are different formats, different delivery mechanisms that is appropriate for different regions for various reasons. Like when you look at Niagara, it's a conglomeration of many small towns and communities, like 19 small towns, right? Then you see Halton, they have 3 or 4 fairly good sized municipalities. But here we have 2 large cities. The 6th and the 9th largest in Canada. Really? Should we have to does Brampton have to bless my developments? Should I have to go to the region appeal? All that duplication. Planners are duplicated, public works, transportation, clerks, lawyers. It goes on and on and on.
Oh, really? I didn't realize all that
and
was
there's thousands of hours. Lawyers, time spent reviewing our planners and what we have recommended. Their lawyers review it, send it back to our lawyers, we review it. Can you imagine the cost and the duplication? We said we can eliminate that.
And it would impact the speed of development as well.
Exactly. And then, what's fair is fair. We don't have to approve Brampton or Caledon's developments, and we don't want them approving ours. We want to make our own decisions.
Now, I know my sister works at the Peel School Board, so one of the questions
It's different, yeah.
So would that also be like a funding, just change the funding?
So we do not manage the school boards. That's strictly provincial.
So could that stay Peel School Board?
I would think it would, but we have not heard that the Premier is looking at school boards. Although, You never know, because he was looking at the LINs.
Right, yes.
He changed the way,
Yes,
the
he did,
format
the
of LINs, took
super
it down to
LIN now,
super
yeah.
LIN, down to 10 LINs
Right.
or whatever it is, right? And he's looked at delivery of paramedics. He is looking at different things. He has not announced school boards
Okay.
yet, but maybe it would
Okay.
come. It could come
But
that he
that's
would look
separate
at
from
school
the
boards.
region.
But it's
Separate
separate
from-
from the region. It's separate
Yeah.
from the city. So they report directly to the province. We don't have anything to do with the school boards.
Okay, all right, that's good to know, because that was a
Yes.
question
Yeah,
somebody had asked.
tell her she can sleep well tonight.
Yes, that's right, because she loves her job.
Well, and our teachers are some of the best here,
Exactly.
and there have been a lot of changes announced, and I hope we don't lose a single teacher.
I
Not
agree.
a single teacher. The class sizes the way they were, with
Yes.
reduced class sizes, with fewer students, they have the opportunity to learn more, make a bigger impact. So I hope things don't change.
And they have a big diversity inclusion initiative going on as well.
Exactly.
Yes, I believe they
Exactly.
started a year or two ago.
Exactly.
But I've been seeing the results of that too, which is nice for when my
You
kids are
can
in
just see
school.
our children thriving.
Yes,
Right? And
yes.
so we don't want any changes.
Okay. Well, I know that you have a busy evening planned, so I'm
Thank
going
you
to
so
let
much.
you go here. I mean, I could keep asking you lots of questions, but
Oh,
I will
we'll
stop.
do it
because
again
I
another
guess.
time.
So thank you very much for joining us for this segment on Inspiring Women in Canada. And again, I would like to thank the Mayor of Mississauga, Bonnie Crombie, for joining us and sharing some of her valuable time with us. Thank you.